You are listening to the Gritty Podcast, where we talk about all things gritty. Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Call. I'm joined here by Brad Hunt. Today's podcast is with Justin Webb with Foundation for Wildlife. It's a great show. Hooked up with Justin at the Western Hunting Expo in Salt Lake City in February, and we got to talk about what their organization does. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
For those that don't know, well, there's a lot of story, but it's a wolf kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Wolf management, basically.
Wolf management. It's an excellent man. He just brings some knowledge and data to this discussion that's very important, very educational. If you're not a member, listen to the podcast and consider putting in the dollars and joining up. It's just it's what we need. And this, I love how this is like consumer driven.
Yeah.
You know,
absolutely.
it's the hunter sponsored, basically.
Yep.
This is possible because of everyone, all the massive number of hunters who get involved and become a part of this.
Yep.
It's what makes this thing tick. And it's a cool story. So you're gonna want to listen. Don't miss it. Thank you for tuning in. Before we get into that, we have two big giveaways going on. A big prize package with Peaks equipment. If you buy the T-shirt, some men can and some men can't.
Yep.
And that prize package includes the Peaks Solitude Teepee, which is an excellent product. We put it through the paces. Lampers and I have been kind of involved in the design and redesign and over and testing. It's an exceptional product. And then they got the poles and the gaiters and the headlamps, which are excellent and have been proven through the test of time as well. So you get all that. Plus, you get like a $500 gift card to the Go Hunt Gear Shop.
Yep.
You get a lifetime membership at Go Hunt Insider membership. You get
$250 Mountain Ops gift card. You got Sheep Feed Orthotics, Dark Energy Poseidon, all in digiscoping. You got a Stealthy Hunter package, which includes the glassing pad raffle cover, medical kit, and some kit sacks. And then you also get an initial ascent backpack.
Boom. Huge package, man. Huge package. And all you got to do to be entered to win is go to Peaks and buy the Some Men Can and Some Men Can't t-shirt. And it helps us continue to do what we do. There's a cool story for the t-shirt as well. If you click the link at Peaks Equipment, you can get the backstory on it. But, that's what we have going on right now. And then we have a big giveaway going on with Initial Ascent backpacks as well.
Yeah.
I've got the new 8K right here. Backpack from Initial Ascent. They put a package together as well. So between now and April 9th, just like the Peaks giveaway, if you shop at Initial Ascent, every $25 gets you entered to win a prize package, which includes the backpack.
Yep. You got a Loophole spotting scope, Loophole tripod, all-in digiscoping setup, $500 gift card to the Go Hunt Gear Shop, a lifetime insider membership. You got Graxall game bags, a goat knife, and an Iron Mountain skull hangers.
The spotter from Leupold and the all-in digiscope is legit. And the carbon fiber tripods that come out of Leupold are legit. We use them on all of our hunts.
Yes.
We're using them to record with this camera now. Surprisingly, Leupold's come out with a pretty dang sweet tripod.
No, maybe they just got the Gitsos. I'm not sure, but they work well.
I know. I'm impressed. So it's a great kit. It's a great package. And all you got to do, if you're on the fence on an Initial Ascent pack, maybe now's the time. Because when you shop over there and use the code GRITTY, you're going to save. But also, you'll be entered to win this prize package, which will be announced in 2 weeks. And also, right now, if you're on the fence, you should go listen to podcast episode 776, where we sat down with Dennis and Joe, the owners of Initial Ascent, and kind of just went over the bag and what makes it unique and the frame and all that kind of stuff. And you get our unfiltered opinions. We're biased, but at the same time, I've tested them all, and it's an excellent pack. So check it out. That's our giveaways going on right now. We just appreciate all the support you give us. Hope you enjoy this podcast. Let us know what you think in the comments below. And thank you for tuning in, and stay gritty. All right, folks, welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I am your host, Brian Call. I got Brad Hunt in the seat next to me. His voice is...
it's gone. It's gone, folks.
I can hear you. And then we got Justin Webb, Executive Director of Foundation for Wildlife Management.
Yes, sir.
Is there an acronym there?
It's F4WM, but I can tell you that
F4W.
even folks that have been with us for a long time, they stumble over that one a little bit.
Foundation for Wildlife Management. Foundation for Wildlife Management. It's a mouthful.
It is a little bit. It is. But there's a reason for the name and how it came to be. Yeah.
So let's get into that. Give the folks that are listening just a little background on yourself, okay. and then share with us what the Foundation for Wildlife Management is for those that don't know. Many probably do know.
I would say there's many that also don't know. And I think there's a lot of people that really don't know what the purpose is behind it and how it will help conservationists, hunters, wildlife management companies, not companies, but states.
Yeah.
When it makes a big difference. So I'll let you kind of do that.
Share with us.
A little about myself. I grew up off the grid. I've been a passionate outdoorsman for the majority of my life, really passionate about wildlife and wildlife conservation. Mule deer for a number of years was my biggest passion.
Okay.
I love chasing bugle and bulls. I spent a number of years working as a hunting guide in North Idaho for Clark Fork Outfitters. I have 3 kids, and when I talk about the Foundation for Wildlife Management, what I encourage our volunteers to do is explain to people why what they're doing is important to them. And some of the best times of my life have included hiking in the dark, climbing a ridge till sweat's pouring off your body, drying yourself off, sitting down and watching the sun come up as elk bugle around you. And that's an experience that, unless we're willing to control our predator populations, I really truly believe the next generation is not going to get to enjoy the way that I have. And so
Mountain Ops is about to start a party. Yeah. We're at the Western Hunt Expo for people that are listening, have been following along. So they'll have to pardon the background noise a little bit. So
getting a little wild.
Carry on, Justin.
Growing up, I watched National Geographic, and I learned from National Geographic that wolves were amazing animals, and they certainly are.
Yes. Okay.
I learned that only the mommy and daddy have babies, and I learned that they only kill the sick and the weak, and they're wonderful for the ecosystem.
Right.
Then I don't know, I think I was probably somewhere around 14 or 15 years old, and we got a wolf as a pet. And so having a wolf as a pet was an adventure. Trying to keep the thing home was the biggest challenge.
Yeah.
It was extremely smart, but
was it a hybrid or?
It was a hybrid. It was 7/8 wolf.
I've been around some
husky.
of those.
Yeah,
they're intense.
Can be at times. Yeah, you bet.
Like I tried to trick the dog. It was like another level of smart.
Were you successful?
No, I would like pretend like I'd throw the throw toy over and over in the dog, and then I went and did that, and the wolf was like, yeah, you didn't throw it. And I would do all sorts of stuff. I'd hide it in the couch and be like, it's gone, and he'd just walk over and grab it. It was like, it's a different animal than a lot of dogs.
It is a lot different animal. So people started talking about how we were going to transplant wolves, and I was super excited about it. I thought it was going to be the coolest thing that could ever happen to North Idaho.
By the way, there's nothing that scares me more than a wolf hybrid. You're playing with fire.
Why. Yeah,
you're playing with fire. You're just waiting for it to just one day go, oh, I'm going to kill this.
They just have animal instincts, just like any other creature.
What creeps me out is they have the animal instincts, but they also have domestication. It's like a Jekyll and Hyde creature. Which day is it going to be which? I don't blame it, but it's got like 2 demons in, like 2 sides of a coin. And
they have the urge to lead that's overwhelming, and without the fear of man, that can be an issue.
Yeah.
You bet.
Yeah.
You bet. So fast forward, wolves come to the landscape.
Yep.
Seeing a wolf track here and there, taking pictures. Everybody's excited. This is so cool. We've got wolves, right?
Yep.
First time you hear a wolf howl, oh my gosh, did you hear that? That's the most amazing sound I've ever heard.
Very eerie.
True.
Right?
I mean, I went through it. It went from I never hunted in a place where there were wolves to all of a sudden hearing a wolf for the first time and then seeing a wolf.
Yeah.
Hunting wolves, like it's been a progression. Now it's not such a rare occurrence where like we expect it.
Yep, it's become that way. So wolves show up, we think it's great. And then we go snowmobiling like we always do. And suddenly we're seeing blood trails in our snowmobile trails.
Right.
You come around a corner and there's a moose with its innards hanging out its backside, flopping around in the sled trail, and there's wolf tracks all around, and we're trying to understand what we must have just spooked these wolves off, right?
Yep.
So that's the only way that this could possibly take place. And you get down the road and there's another one. Same situation, half chewed up, flopping around.
Yeah.
What the heck is going on? They didn't eat it. Why? We had all these questions.
I witnessed that firsthand when I was archery elk hunting. Got up there and the spike was standing there with its entrails wrapped around sagebrush and stuff, just quivering. It was like the most gruesome scene I really have been around, in actual nature. And it was very, very eye opening to me. It's like, the rear end of the elk is chewed up. The guts are hanging out. The nose is kind of chewed up. The rest of it untouched. Yeah. And they were off. Like they weren't around. They were not nearby, and that elk had been standing there for a long time.
You bet.
So I put it down. I ended up tagging the elk. I took most of the meat off of it. It was fine. But
yeah,
just experiencing that, it's gruesome.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to digest, and unless you see something like that, it's hard to understand what that experience is like, in my opinion. So, we started seeing this. We started asking questions, trying to better understand. We got in touch with the Idaho Fish and Game Department's big game biologist at that time, visited with him about it a little bit, trying to better understand what was really taking place out there, because what we were seeing was not what we had been told we would see when wolves came on the landscape. So fast forward, next season, we're chasing bugle and bulls, except none of them will talk. The elk are no longer in the basins that they used to be in.
Yep.
We're seeing elk showing up in the river bottoms and in people's backyards where they had never been before.
Yeah.
And we were trying to understand. We come to this conclusion, well, the wolves must be having some kind of an impact, whether they're impacting their population or just their behavior. They're definitely having an impact. Maybe we should stop hunting elk in these areas that are suffering these issues and start targeting wolves. So a small, close-knit group of passionate backcountry elk hunters from North Idaho took the year off from chasing elk, and decided they were going to go chase wolves. Hunted all season, and nobody took a wolf. So we started doing research, and we started talking to people from Canada and Alaska about how do the guys that have had wolves for years and years, how do they manage them? What's the most efficient means of doing this? And everybody said, well, if you're not trapping them, you're not going to be able to harvest enough to be able to keep up with their reproduction rates. And so we didn't know anything about trapping. Did a little bit of research, found a guy that traps bobcats and marten for a living through the winter months. Called him up all excited. This guy's going to fix our problem. We're going to get this figured out, right? So we called him up and, hey, can we buy you lunch? Yeah, you bet. Brought him into town, sat him down. One of the guys just chimed right in and said, we need you to teach us how to trap wolves. And he just kind of chuckled a little bit and he said, I don't trap wolves. And one of the guys says, well, wait a minute. You're the only one we know that knows how to do this. What do you mean you don't trap wolves? Do you hunt elk? He says, well, of course I hunt elk. That's how we feed our family. We live in North Idaho. That's what we do. Mm-hmm. And he says, well, you're obligated to trap wolves. You're the only one we know that can do this. Mm-hmm. You're obligated. And he smiled and he said, no. He said, I'm obligated to keep the lights on. I'm obligated to feed my family. Trapping wolves is going to cost you so much money, you won't be able to do it. And one of the guys, he says, man, I spent $3,000 this year targeting wolves. I didn't get to go elk hunting. I should have just paid you $3,000 and had you go take some wolves out of my favorite elk hunting spot. Yeah. And through that conversation, one of the guys chimes in and says, no, I'm serious. What'll it take? I'll pay you. I'll pay you to do it. Like, we're seeing severe negative impacts here.
Yeah.
And through the conversation, the guy said, well, I guess for $500 a wolf, I'll give it a try. I'll at least run some wolf gear while I'm trapping bobcats and marten. And the group started laying money on the table. And
that's nice.
That
a little bit of money talks, right?
Well, they were pretty fired up about it, and that little bit of money turned into phone calls to all of our buddies. Hey, these guys are willing to do it. They say that they can get it done. This is what everybody tells us from Canada and Alaska is what it's going to take. We need your money. And people started putting it together. And one of the guys was smart enough to say, hey, I think we should call Fish and Game, make sure this is legal. And so, they met up with Fish and Game and eventually moved on to hire a lawyer, and they put together a 501c3. This took place back in 2011 when it all started. We got our 501c3 status in 2012. And back to the acronym concept, one of the guys says, well, we got to have a name, right? I mean, you can't have a 501c3 without a good name. What's going to be a catchy name? And they started talking about it. And what they settled on, they said, you know what? When you've got a predator that's having this much of an impact on what could change your entire lifestyle, what is that to wildlife management? What is that? And one of the guys says, well, just like building a house, it's a foundation. That's the foundation of managing your wildlife. If this predator is going to destroy all that you know, this is the foundation of managing your wildlife. And so, therefore, the Foundation for Wildlife Management came to be.
Fast forward to today, what does it look like? Because it's not just one trapper.
No, it certainly isn't.
So
the Foundation for Wildlife Management, along with our Wolf Harvest Expense Reimbursement Program, has grown to over 3,500 members spanning 42 states, most of which live or recreate within Idaho and Montana, which is where our organization currently has Wolf Harvest Expense Reimbursement plans.
Okay, so describe that. Explain that. Lay that out for us.
You bet. So the concept is harvest success rates on wolves are less than 1/4%. It's important that everybody understands that wolves are extremely difficult to manage. 74,041 people bought wolf tags in Idaho and Montana last year. 411 guys connected. Only 42 people took more than 2 wolves. So the Foundation for Wildlife Management provides this Wolf Harvest Expense Reimbursement program to members. So you pay $40 to be a member. If you're not actively targeting wolves, if you don't have the time to run a trap line every 48 hours in Montana, or run a trap line every 72 hours in Idaho, or have extensive periods of time to take off from your job to be able to go out and hunt wolves, your $40 membership is a way for those people who have concerns to actively do something productive to help. Okay. You go on social media, the hype is wolves are the problem.
Yeah.
Everybody's complaining. My elk don't talk anymore. All the elk are in the farm fields. All the elk are in the river bottoms. What used to be an elk in every drainage is now a large group of elk every dozen drainages until the wolves hit them and then they blow up.
Right.
It's a real common conversation. But what are you doing about it, right? So this $40 membership provides a way for those guys to help the very few that can get it done to get it done. So for a person that's going to be out trapping or hunting wolves, or even if you're just an elk hunter and a deer hunter and you think that you're in an area where wolves may run into you, which is the most common practice for the wolves that are harvested in the state of Idaho, it's typically incidental. Your $40 entitles you to reimbursement of your expenses up to a set amount for every unit within the state. And those units, the amounts for each unit are altered and edited each season based on the need of harvest. So as an example, the Foundation for Wildlife Management, we actually have a map on our website that is linked to the reimbursement process, and it shows all of the different units and how much is funded for each unit. So to give you a brief breakdown, we went to the Idaho Fish and Game Department and we said, we want to assist you in reaching your wolf management objectives. So where do you want to see wolves harvested? Where are they causing the most grief? If you look at the map, and I wish I'd brought it with me to show you guys. If you look at the map of the management units for elk within the state of Idaho that are no longer meeting objectives,
Right.
it's fairly drastic. And that map can be found on our website, F4WM.org. Click on reimbursements and the map pops up. In the units that are not meeting elk objectives, right now we have a $1,500 per wolf removed reimbursement plan. In the units that are suffering chronic livestock depredation, meaning chronic being defined as having confirmed kills in 4 out of the previous 5 years, we're funding $2,000 per wolf removed within those units. And statewide, both Idaho and Montana, we fund $500 for any legally harvested wolf. We've got a $1,000 reimbursement in Unit 1, and then $750 in Regions 1 and 2 in the states of Montana. And it's a little bit complicated and confusing unless you have that color-coded map in front of you to be able to identify. But here's the deal. Idaho Fish and Game came on board about 5 years ago, providing grant funds in order to assist us in encouraging sportsman harvest of wolves in the areas where they're causing most grief. So the only reason that we can afford to fund $1,500 and $2,000 per wolf is through the cost share agreement plans that we enter into with the Idaho Fish and Game Department.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you too, Justin, is like, how's that been dealing with government officials in Idaho? Because I'm an Idaho resident. Dealing with government officials through Idaho and the Fish and Game through Idaho. Like, has that been a pretty smooth sailing process, or has it been really hard? Has it been tough?
Well, I'll tell you, we spent the last 10 years and working on this. And in the beginning, it was difficult. You know, we were a small group of people. And when we first presented some proposals for change, we were wanting to see more liberalized wolf harvest seasons, earlier trapping seasons, more tags available to the very few people that we knew that could get it done. We took those proposals to the Idaho Fish and Game Department, and they were always willing to work with us. We had established a working relationship with them, but we'd bring them proposals and they'd say, gosh, you guys have done a lot of work here. Thank you so much for what you're doing. It's nice to see some sportsmen working together a little bit here, but we can't implement these changes because the Idaho Trappers Association would never support this. I was confused at that time, and after hearing that, I got a little bit frustrated. I jumped in my truck and I drove 9 hours to southern Idaho to introduce myself to this Idaho Trappers Association. I had no idea who they were or what they stood for, but I wanted them to know why they would stand in opposition of helping us control wolves when trapping was the only method that we were told at that time that was going to be successful.
Right.
So we went down there, and I spent 3 days there with them, 3 or 4 days, and we just, I was talking to them about how what I see in the outdoor industry today is we have all these different special interests, right? We've got long-range shooters and we've got traditionalists. We've got bird dog guys and we've got houndsmen, and we've got the archers and
everybody has their own opinion.
The trapping community, right? And we all have our own focus, and that's why it's important to have all those organizations. But unfortunately, when we interact with each other, we nitpick at each other, right?
Yeah.
And we put each other down. And the whole concept I wanted to present to them was, can we set all of our differences aside and just look at what we have in common?
Right.
And we started talking about that and the power in it and the army that we can be when we set our differences aside and focus on what we have in common to be able to create positive changes. The next year, when we presented proposals to the Fish and Game Department, asking for additional seasons, additional tags, less restrictive trapping seasons, we walked in, and my buddy Rusty Kramer, who's now on my board and I'm on their board for the Idaho Trappers Association, was standing next to me, and my own commissioner said, gosh, you guys have done so much work here. You've brought all these sportsmen's organizations together. It's so nice to see you guys working together. You've done such a great job. Unfortunately, we aren't going to be able to implement these changes because the Idaho Houndsman Association would never go along with this. Oh, my gosh. And I kind of smiled, and I look over at Rusty, and Rusty says, that's funny. We just bought them dinner, and they're about to testify in our favor. And that was the turning point. We got everything we asked for that year. And going forward, we learned to unite our sportsmen's voices and take that to the ag industry leadership and unite that with the Idaho Cattlemen's Association, the Idaho Farm Bureau, the Idaho Wool Growers. And now when we walk into the commission, the commissioners know already that whatever we're presenting has already been vetted by all the organizations across the state that have some clout. And it's supported, and we aren't going to bring them something that is not supported. And so, the question was, how has it been working with them? It's been great, but it's definitely taken some time to build a working relationship and build that trust.
What I was going to say, too, is, they opened in Idaho, they opened the wolf season in 2009.
Yep.
And then I believe, was it 2011 they shut it down, or 2010? I think it was right after. They kind of shut it down again.
Yep.
And you guys were founded in 2011, right? How much of an impact did you guys have on reopening the season? I want to know. Maybe you didn't have any impact in it. I'm not sure.
At that point, I don't believe that our voice was large enough to really, truthfully have an impact. We were going to the department all excited and bragging. We've got 350 members, and by golly, you need to listen to us, right? Yeah. Well, it's a whole different story when you walk in and the director of government affairs for Idaho Farm Bureau is standing next to you, and he gets up and talks about representing 180,000 Idaho families.
Yeah.
And you've got a long list of sportsmen's groups backing your proposals. It's a whole different conversation.
Even us, like Ryan Lampers and myself, we'd heard about it, but we really hadn't dove into it very deep. Like, we just didn't research it enough. And then I think it was 2020, 2021. We're like, you know what? We need to jump on board with this. And so we did. And, Ryan was fortunate enough to take a wolf shortly after that,
Yeah.
But it's like just the process. It is simple. You guys simplify it. And then now, obviously, with the mapping, you can see the regions, the zones, and there's very few people that really get after wolves, and those people fascinate me. Like Tom Schneider, we had him on the podcast recently.
Yep.
I want to pick Tom's brain even more.
He even has a wolf hunting class.
Yeah, he have a wolf hunting class now, and it's like,
Yeah.
I'm jumping on board with that. Like, I'd love to trap, but at this point in time, I don't know if I have time to do it, and I'm not in an area that has enough wolves. I don't think yet. I
Yeah.
hope they don't get there ever, but yet.
Wolves travel a great
I do.
distance.
That's also like, what's your thoughts on the Colorado stuff? With the reintroduction and
It's heartbreaking. I'm not gonna lie.
Right.
It's sad, and without the political clout to implement at least
Right.
foot traps for wolves, they have no method to control that population. And what people don't understand about Colorado is they have 3 times the prey base Idaho has ever had.
right.
And so what's going to happen when those wolves really take off, it's going to be like wildfire, and they have no mechanism to be able to control them.
Yeah, and I think with the reintroduction, and I could be correct me if I'm totally wrong, but I feel that the process was already beginning. Wolves were already traveling there, spreading their territories. And then when you reintroduce them, I mean, in my head, I think, okay, these wolves, when they're naturally reintroduced, these elk can adapt a little bit over a timely process. Where when you reintroduce these wolves, that process is from 0 to 100, and those wolves are just going to get hammered. Or the elk are just going to get hammered.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
I'm like, I don't know, it's scary to me.
I couldn't agree more. And I really wish that people understood the dynamics of wolf populations. They spent 30 years studying wolves and suitable habitat within what
Right.
they call the NRM DPS, the Northern Rocky Mountain Distinct Population Segment Area. And within that system, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service determined that there was enough suitable habitat for 1,100 total wolves in the entire system. And that system includes all of Montana, all of Idaho, all of Wyoming, the eastern 1/3 of both Washington and Oregon, and a section of Utah.
Yep.
Their management objective that they stated in the 2009 delisting rule called for management of 1,100 total wolves in the entire system,
The entire system.
with 500 in Idaho, 400 in Montana, and 200 to 300 in Wyoming.
Yep.
They stated in that delisting rule that if we were to ever have 1,500 or more wolves, that would steadily deplete our prey base, the ungulate population, deer, elk, moose, and livestock, and it would cause chronic livestock depredations. And that's exactly what's taken place in the state of Idaho. And that map on our website is so profound because it shows you where all of those units, people used to come from all over the country to hunt elk in Idaho, and the majority of our state no longer meets elk objectives because of the wolf population.
And I would say too, like there, maybe not now, but there was a point I felt like from the numbers and there was almost that many wolves in Idaho alone. Not just through the whole ecosystem. It was Idaho alone.
Well, so Montana alone has housed the 1,100 wolves we're supposed to have in the entire system only on the western half of their state for close to 10 years now.
Yeah.
Idaho has been in the mid 1500s for at least 6 years that we know of, and this year is the first time ever that we've actually been able to reduce their numbers. And it was only reduced by 13%. There was that Senate Bill 1211 that was ran a couple years back that essentially, it provided sportsmen a few more tools. That's all it did.
Right.
Somebody in the hearing made the comment, well, what are you trying to do? Kill 90% of our wolves? And the media sent around the world that Idaho, with the swipe of the governor's pen, had just removed 90% of their wolves.
Right.
And I still get calls today
That's
that
not
say,
how it works, folks.
no. I still get calls today saying, well, don't you feel guilty having a reimbursement when you just took out 90% of them?
Yeah.
And I'm like, 90%? Good golly.
That's the problem with the modern era we're in is things that require nuance and more than that take a paragraph or two to explain.
Yeah.
You're disadvantaged there when someone else can just print a lie that's one sentence
As a title.
and then go. And then to undo that one sentence lie with 2 paragraphs, it's nearly impossible because people don't even have the time for that. That in-depth discussion. It's how do you grab their attention and then go, okay, I know you heard this, but this is what they're done. They're like moving on, next TikTok. It's bad. When they did that, however, they rolled out the initiative, the governor, all of that in Idaho, and they took the gloves off in a sense so that sportsmen could use greater means to manage the population.
Yep.
What's the feedback on that to this point? How has that impacted? You just said it
Very little.
Yeah.
It had very little effect, and the bottom line is, well, as I mentioned, out of 74,041 guys, 42 people took more than 2 wolves.
Well, I'll say this, Justin, and even like us, we spend 100
We
plus
probably
days
spend
in
more
the
days
field.
in the field than
People do it in 5 years.
99% of dudes.
And it's like, how often do you really see a wolf? You may hear them. You see them, they're already gone. Like, they're traveling. It's hard to just hunt them with a rifle or a bow. Like, you're not going to touch populations with that.
Let's talk about that a little bit, too, because, like, we'll be out there 360 days in a year, or in a year 365. We are out in the field for sometimes 150, some years 200 days I've been in the field to not see a single wolf in areas where they're there. You can hear them every day.
See tracks,
and you don't see one.
Them.
So for a guy to like and we have gone out of our way to try to call them in, get set up, get them, fire some long range shots here and there. But for the most part, you're not going to take them out that way. Certainly not at a number that is substantial. Trapping seems to be the only means, unless you're going to fly over them with a chopper. It's trapping. Am I wrong?
No, not wrong at all. I'll share with you. And people ask me how difficult it is, and I try to help them understand that I don't know what else to use other than my own experience. And I try to share with everybody, I grew up off the grid. I'm no slouch. I'm not a weekend warrior. I put some serious time in the backcountry. I've been very blessed in my hunting career. Anything I've ever targeted, I've found success with, and wolves flat whoop me. It's incredible. Well, I can tell you this: I've trapped just shy of 40 wolves now, and I've never got to pull the trigger on a wolf that wasn't in a trap. I've had them inside of 50 yards of me in the timber and can't get it done.
It is incredible how fast a wolf can cover from 20 yards to 500, 1,000 yards. I mean, there's such a long stride.
Dude, it is in Lampers. It doesn't matter what hunt we're on. We hear a wolf, it becomes a wolf hunt.
Yep.
And it's like, dude, you have like a 1% chance.
You're looking for a haystack.
And it's like, for the next 4 hours, it's a wolf hunt. And you're like, gosh. And we got a giant bear over here that we've been after. And it's like, the man is like, he is addicted. He has got to take out. It's like, there's nothing he hates. Like bears. We've seen bears treeing like or bears going after fawns, like younger bears too, on like elk. The man wants to shoot that bear. It doesn't matter if it's like a baby bear trying to get that thing. It's just like, okay, I'll use my tag. There's a primal drive, and I think all of us, when we do see a wolf, to eliminate it. And I was having this conversation with Robbie, and he was saying, I want him on the landscape. I want to hear him. I like, and I get that. I also want him managed. And hunters feel that way. And I was thinking, well, there are hunters who do feel like it's great that they're here. There's hunters that are like, I wish they never came, and I hate that we have them. You have a little of both.
You bet.
Very controversial topic. But back to the trapping of the wolves being the most effective way to manage them. It sounds like in the state of Idaho, there's the political drive to loosen the regulations, the seasons, enable the trapping, and they recognize the importance of managing wolf populations so that they can maintain this prey base.
Yes, sir.
My argument has always been, to someone who's against that, is to say, that prey base is extremely valuable to both nature, but to humans as well.
Yeah.
It's not that I don't want wolves there, but there's a true economic penalty for wolves being there. I think it was Shane Mahoney said 550 million pounds of whitetail venison is consumed annually. This was like years ago, annually. So, okay, let's go look at elk, moose, and deer on the west. If you have 550 million pounds of let's say meat that is being consumed by hunters on an annual basis, and now you're going to feed that to an unchecked wolf population, like all of that, like just let it go. Oh yeah, it'll reach equilibrium.
Yep.
Where there's none available whatsoever, or a sliver of that is now you're going to go, okay, instead of 550 million pounds of protein consumed by human beings, we're going to feed it to wolves. So we have just massive amounts of that. They're going to reach equilibrium, and your human pop is going to be able to, I don't know, harvest 50 million pounds instead of 550 million pounds, 100 million pounds, whatever that is. Still, my question is, okay, where do humans now find that other 400 million pounds of elk meat that you just decided to give up to wolves? Well, we're going to need to put, like, I don't know, few 100,000 acres of farmland here. We're going to have to get rid of this, get rid of that, put more cattle, mass farming, more chickens in pens. We're going to have to take away habitat from we're going to have to rely on more soybean and whatever crops. And there's a real cost to that replacement.
You bet.
Is it worth now when you have to own the consequences of that choice? Are you now still okay with just letting wolves do their thing?
Well, that's the thing.
It's like they think it's magic.
Yeah.
Like it's okay. Like we can have the wolves and never hunt them, and all this other stuff there's no cost. And I have such a hard time getting people to understand the penalty of such a view.
So let me chime in here. So I just want to share with you one of the concepts that I try to present to people. One of the biggest argument that I get personally and have gotten over the last 10 years is let nature balance itself. Leave things alone, right?
Right.
Let it go. It'll fix
up.
itself. So here's the kicker. Most people don't realize that when nature balances itself, we no longer have the game populations that we have built using 130 years
Hunter
of
conservation dollars.
Implementing the North American model, right?
Yeah.
And so we have done all of this work to improve habitat, to maximize populations, and not only for hunting, but also for just human enjoyment. I can't tell you how much I enjoy taking my kids and just going to watch wildlife in the spring.
We just got back from Mexico. We were hunting Coues deer. You want to see a place where nature has balanced itself? You see 3 deer a day.
Yep.
On 150,000 acres. Now we didn't see it all, but like every day we went out. You go to Arizona, hundreds of deer a day.
Yeah.
What's the difference? We manage for that here, and there they do nothing.
They do not. And you obviously have guzzlers and stuff to help the deer in those dry climates in Arizona where you don't have Mexico.
Right.
But predation, when you have those dry years, those deer are going to one water source.
There's no predator
that
management.
one water source.
There's all sorts of reasons. The point is, in Mexico, they don't manage for maximum of that resource.
Yep.
And so it's exactly what you're saying to that person when left alone and not managed. They don't realize how few will be remaining at the end of that.
Well, RMEF does a really great job of calling out the numbers. And so, I did a big write-up I had the opportunity to give a presentation to a series of biology teachers from across the state of Montana. And I started out with the difference between preservation management and conservation management and the importance and when those are implemented and why. So in 1907, there were 550,000 elk. Now there's 1.1 million. That did not happen without conservation efforts, right?
Yes.
So the 550,000 is an example of letting nature balance itself. In 1900, there was 500,000 whitetails. Now there's 30 million. In 1950, there was 12,000 antelope. Now there's 1.1 million. What happens, and what people, even a 7-year-old kid can understand this, every living being has to have a set amount of food, water, shelter, and space to survive, right?
Correct.
7-year-old kid can agree with that. They studied this NRM DPS system that encompasses all of Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, the eastern 1/3 of Washington and Oregon, a section of Utah, and they found that there's enough suitable habitat, food, water, shelter, and space to house, in a healthy way, 1,100 total wolves. That's all you can put in there. Any more than that is going to collapse their prey base. So when we've done all this work for 130 years to maximize our ungulate populations, deer, elk, moose, etc., for our enjoyment, I love seeing elk when I'm in the backcountry. I love seeing moose when I'm driving around. I love seeing baby fawns, even in people's neighborhoods.
Yeah,
wildlife is such a valued commodity, and everybody that wants us to allow nature to balance itself also talks about biodiversity and the importance of it. But they don't understand that if you allow your predator base to outgrow your prey base collapses.
Crashes.
What happens to all those predators?
They die too.
They die of disease and starvation.
You have ebbs and flows, massive drops. And if the way nature works is they wipe out the prey base, and then the predators suffer. They wipe out themselves. And then the prey base booms again. And what modern management has done is eliminate those giant crashes in those years it takes to rebuild and flattened it.
Oh, and the other thing too is like when people say you don't let nature take its course. Well, guess what? 25 years ago, 50 years ago, 70 years ago, we screwed that up already because we took the wolves out. We also reintroduced the wolves. Like,
well,
we screwed that
I look
up.
at it this way. It's like, I try to explain it like this. When you say nature will balance itself, okay? Nature used to somehow be able to do that. Like elk could travel from one area to another and escape wolves. They could outmaneuver them. They could go to this space for this winter range, summer range. They had places to go that were protective places. Picture it like this. Now you've taken a bunch of elk and you said, hey, you're in this fenced area. That's all you get. Because look, we put a housing tract here and a sky rise over here. So here's your little fenced spot, elk. And here, we're going to throw a bunch of wolves in there too. Where do they go? You can't say we're just going to be hands off on nature. You already wrecked it. Now all you can do is do your best to manage the pockets that you have. And they require management because the elk don't have a refuge. These animals don't have a place like they used to 200 years ago. It's not the same world we're in today.
Yeah. And like you said, Justin, is where you never saw elk, say, down close to people in the towns and stuff. Those elk have now moved there because it's like, it's somewhat of a secure area, you know?
Yeah.
We feel safe.
Yep.
And it's like, then you have obviously issues with the community and stuff. But going back to the, you have 550 million pounds of meat and you take away, 400 million pounds of that. Cattle ranchers and farmers are already having a big enough, hard enough time producing enough cattle for cattle, meat markets and stuff, and also for the ranching style. It's like, where are you going to come up? Land's not getting any cheaper, and the amount of land that you can have for farming obviously gets smaller and smaller because they sell it off. Where are you going to keep all those cattle to reintroduce the amount of meat that you need to replace that elk meat or deer meat? I think that's a big factor too.
It's a complicated situation.
It's a very complicated situation.
And it's dynamic. And one of the things I think that also gets missed is humans also need the same things wildlife needs. We have to have the set amount of food, water, shelter, and space.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, we didn't have the human population back then that we do now. And so, in my opinion, we are very much a part of this ecosystem. It just happens to be that we have the ability and the capacity to control a lot of the dynamics that take place there for the good of everybody, all the above. I mean, we can balance our predator base and keep that prey base from collapsing so that we still have wildlife to enjoy.
Yeah.
I still want my kids to get to hike up a ridge in the dark and sit and watch the sun come up with elk bugling around them.
Yeah.
And unless we control our predator populations, that's going to go away. In some places, it will be deleted. And
it already is.
It is. Yeah, it absolutely is going away. And so that's the reasoning behind my why for what I'm doing with the Foundation for Wildlife Management and my passion behind it. And this foundation isn't just quote unquote Justin Webb. I've heard people say, oh, this is Justin's Wolf Foundation, whatever. There's an army of people that are involved here, 3,500 members. We got a board of 9 volunteers that work their tails off to try to maintain this program and keep it going.
Well, and I think something that's important to discuss as well is as this prey base declines, right? And you have fewer and fewer animals there and the demand has gone up, it gets harder and harder to get a tag as it is.
Yep.
That revenue disappears from the state, which is used to manage all wildlife. A high demand for elk is a huge economical driver for the state being able to manage for this rare bird and this other species and so on. And again, if you feed it to an unchecked wolf population, you lose all that economic potential that would then go back into better and better management of the ecosystem that we're trying to handle. It's just all the way around. It doesn't make sense to give wolves a free pass. Be like, yeah, that's the species we don't hunt. They're sacred. It makes no sense at all. It's one of the things that bothers me when I have these discussions online. And it's like, you're okay with me killing elk, but you're not okay with me to kill a wolf. I feel like that's really bigoted.
What really bugs me
I mean?
It's really like bugs me is like, I'm a hunter. I like chasing elk, but why would you shoot a wolf?
Right.
And I'm like, dude, you're in two totally different worlds here. Like, if you care for your elk, I mean, take Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, for example. They love to hunt elk, but guess what? We now have more elk to hunt and more populations that sustain themselves because of help of others. And you're just putting that help towards the elk and the other wildlife, not just elk. I mean, it's all wildlife.
Yeah.
Ungulates and stuff, that those wolves, if you're not hunting the wolves, you're not going to be helping out them or yourself or the people that want to continue to do this.
And wolves specifically are such a dynamic animal. They have an impact on so many other critters, and that's not talked about often either. Elk get the kind of the spotlight here because elk are the most commonly and productively hunted species.
Yeah.
What about our moose?
I know.
Our Idaho moose tags have been cut in half how many times in the last 5 years?
Yeah.
There
was a point when I had like a 20% chance of drawing a moose tag, and it just gone down, 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 down.
Yeah. What about our Selkirk caribou herd that are now extinct?
Right, exactly.
And I not functionally extinct. They are extinct. They trapped the last remaining caribou out of the Selkirks and took it to Canada as a means to try to save that bloodline.
Yep.
Yeah.
And now they're trying to breed that species up there. That was wolves that caused the depletion of the caribou.
And even same with deer fawns. Like, I mean, the wolves are so smart. They know how to work. Like, and we kind of talked about it before the podcast, but I'm like, I always wonder, how does it affect the goat and sheep populations as well?
You bet.
I mean, it has to make an indent somehow or somewhere.
I read the book. It was Coyote America.
Okay.
With Dan Flores, and he talked about the history of wolf and coyote management, their eradication, the policies that the United States had, how they were able to do what they did. And in the book, they talk about how they were able to actually eliminate wolves, but not coyotes, and the reasons why. And it's pretty fascinating story and understanding of biology that goes into play and stuff like that. But as I watched it, as I listened to the book, I realized that one of the things that he said is, without poisons, you're not ever going to get rid of wolves ever again. They're here to stay. And he's like, coyotes poisoned they're like cockroaches.
Yes.
You were never going to get rid of coyotes. You kill one, they're like a hydra. They grow 7 more heads. He's like, you kill all the coyotes in an area, and instead of a female having a pup or 2 pups, they'll have 12.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's hormonal. It's like they're unstoppable.
Yeah.
Wolves also being very much in the same vein. The only reason is their pack nature tend to make them more killable with poison, and they don't have that hormone response to increase the number of pups they have based on the landscape being vacant. So
you bet
they couldn't exponentially bring back their population overnight, various reasons. But the overall gist was the idea that wolves and coyotes need protection is ludicrous. It's absolutely silly. Yeah, they are so adaptive and power. They are here to, you can't get rid of them. You cannot. You could like we just said, you could remove all restrictions and it didn't matter. Hardly any of them were killed.
Well, the general public seems to have this perception that we hunted and trapped wolves to the low numbers that were here before we did the transplant program. Right. And what they don't understand is we had full-time government, state, county, and local employees that did nothing but target wolves. Right. Everyone, all the general public either feared wolves or they hated wolves. And so every wolf got shot on site.
Yep.
And they still couldn't control their numbers. They didn't poison them because they wanted to see wolves suffer. They poisoned them because they couldn't figure out how to control their population.
Yeah.
And that's what took place. And people don't understand that.
Well, and you also have it back in the day when you have people's livelihood determined by the cattle on their land.
You bet.
And wolves are wiping them out. You can't afford to lose one cow when you're a cattleman with 10 cows, and you're over here with, like, as a person today, we take that for granted. I'm not a cattleman back 200 years ago, 100 years ago. And if you've got that cow out there, you're like, we need to get rid of these wolves so our family can be fed and we can survive. You don't think about that they'll be gone. They seem impossible to eradicate. But with strychnine, poison a horse or something, all of them eat it eventually. Like, it was possible and it happened, but it took 100 years. And to bring them back took nothing.
Yeah.
10
Very
years
little.
and they're everywhere. And I don't think people knew the Pandora's box that they're opening. And all I ask is, hey, if we're going to open the box and put them back, then let us manage them per the directives so that we can keep those numbers where they're at, so that those giant prey populations we built over the years remain intact.
Do not decimate. Yeah.
So that we can maximize the value of the hunt for across the state, across the nation. I think wolves are their own thing, because a lot of people will say, this goes back to what you said at the very beginning. They're like, well, cats. What about mountain lions? And, you hunt mountain lions. People see, they go, well, we didn't really kill a lot of mountain lions, and we still have, and the populations were fine. You guys are just dreaming up that wolves are impactful. Lions are out there, and you don't kill that many, and the populations do fine. So, shut your mouth. Wolves are the same. Well, wolves are not the same.
No, they are not.
Anyone who has had a dog with a high prey drive and has observed it knows that they just kill to kill. They're just like, have you ever had a dog where you're like, this dog will hunt till it drops?
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
all day, every day.
And
Like,
there's no quit.
there's no quit. So explain a little bit of that nature in a wolf to me.
You bet. So I'll share the biggest aspect of that conversation that's so profound to me is simple math. A bear and a lion has a cub or two cubs every other to every third year.
Right.
Yep.
This whole concept that National Geographic taught me when I was little, that only mommy and daddy have babies, is hogwash. And I'm here to tell you, and the stats will say that exactly. Idaho has an average pack size of 6, average litter size of 7, with 30% of our packs having multiple litters because more than one female gets bred.
Yeah.
Some people say, oh, that's hogwash. Well, go read the Yellowstone Wolf Report.
Yeah.
The Junction Butte pack has 34 wolves strong, and they had 4 litters of pups. And the majority of those pups left prior to 10 months of age due to food stress. Everybody's upset about these wolves that left the park and got shot in Montana.
Right.
Nobody stopped to ask the question, why did those wolves leave?
Look at the elk
Why did they
population.
leave in the first place?
I don't know how many numbers there are, but look at the elk population numbers. And there's a survey, I think like 2001, or I can't recall exactly when, they did in Yellowstone. Now you look at that number.
3,000.
What is it, 10%, 15%, 20% of what that number was?
It's down to 3,000 animals.
Yeah. And it's like, holy cow.
So back to the dynamics there and the differences. Not only do you have that much more reproduction rate, but you also have an animal that's hunting in packs and that has an instinct to chase like nothing else,
Yeah.
right? So a mountain lion that used to kill one whitetail a week, bury it, and feed on it all week long,
Right. Exactly.
now gets run off of that deer by a pack of wolves that has learned that that's a quick, easy meal. And now that lion has to kill 4 or 5 times before he ever gets to eat to start with, right? So a mountain lion that used to kill one whitetail a week, when you try to compare that to a pack of 6 or 7 wolves, when the pups are with them, you're looking at 15 of them. Depending on which biologist you talk to, they say that on average, a wolf has to consume between 16 and 28 elk-sized big game animals a year just to survive.
Right.
Okay,
Per wolf.
per wolf.
Yep.
Correct. So we use the number 20 just as an estimate. We have an average lifespan of 7 years. So considering each wolf must consume to survive 140 elk in its lifetime, to be able to survive.
Right.
So people, to help people understand, I guess I'll use a little bit of imagery here. If I took my chocolate lab into a yard full of sheep, having never been to a stockyard before, and I said nothing to him, and a sheep took off running, what would my dog do?
He's going.
He'd be on its heels, right?
Yep.
Is it because he's hungry? No, I just fed him. He's fat.
yeah.
He's lazy, right?
Instinct.
You bet. It's an instinctive, innate instinct to chase.
Yes.
So when they chase him down, is he going to bite it? Yeah, it's a dog. That's what they do.
Yep.
They chase, they chew. When it stops moving, are they going to stand there and eat the whole thing? No, because he didn't chase it because he was hungry. He chased it because it ran. Well, when a pack of 6, 12, 15 wolves come over a ridgetop and a herd of elk takes off running, what are they going to do? They're going to run it down. They may have just eaten, but it doesn't matter. If that elk runs, it's getting chased. That's just basic dynamics of canine biology. That's what they're wired to do. I don't, people think that I hate wolves because I promote this program. I have learned over the last 10 years studying wolves and spending up to 200 days a year in the field tracking wolves and trying to learn and understand. They are the most amazing animal I have ever been around, and I have more respect for a wolf than any other animal that we have here in the state.
Same here.
No question, bar none. Wolves are absolutely amazing, amazing animals, but they do not operate the way bears and lions do, and they cannot be managed that way.
No.
Their reproduction rates far surpass, their kill rates far surpass what they consume. It's totally different than a bear or a lion, and they have to be managed differently.
Yeah. That's just it. I mean, when you see how a pack of wolves will come on something stuck in the snow, and they'll kill or maim, 20 animals in a few minutes, and then just walk off.
Yep.
It's eye opening. And the media tries to tell you is that they only kill what they're going to eat, and it's like,
and the wicked
you have
sick.
To believe that, you have to have no grasp on canine behavior and dogs. And it's like, have you ever spent time with a dog? Like, it's so hard to understand, and that people don't get the difference. And it's really grotesque to see the waste that happens. And they say nothing wastes in nature, and in a sense that's true. Someone else will come in there. There are birds that'll eat it, the bugs will eat it, the things will eat it, but it won't be humans.
Nope.
And when that happens, where do the humans go? To a cattle lot. When the cattle lot's too small, we build another cattle lot.
Yep.
Or you could manage the wolves, and you could have both. You can leave the cattle lots where they're at.
Well, they're already struggling enough.
Use the wolf population, manage that wolf population. It just bothers me. It's so basic to me that the decision to feed all the wild game to an unchecked wolf population just results in disaster across the board. Like so many consequences down the road. And so my big concern, by the time organizations and states figure out that they open Pandora's box and their whole population of this species and that species are just gone, by the time they figure that out, and they're like, well, maybe we should trap some. It's going to take so long.
Yeah.
It's going to take so long and by then I think in some ways it's just there are those who know that they just want hunting gone completely.
And I think that hunting not hunting, but trapping is kind of a somewhat lost art.
It's controversial. Management tactic.
We live in such a fast-paced city life, we are, I would say, getting away from what we did, 100 years ago. There were a lot more trappers. And your trappers today, I would say there aren't that many young trappers. They're more the older guys. And how much have they, passed on to the next generation?
Yeah, but
I don't know.
I believe that trapping has resurged
I do
because
too.
of the need now.
I would definitely agree. You know, trapping licenses had dwindled, you know, well below 1,000 in the state of Idaho prior to wolves coming on the scene. And the interest in trying to control wolf numbers so that we can have healthy wolf yet ungulate populations has resurged trapping in a huge way. It's, you know, our licenses are at least 3 times what they had been. And we've got some guys that spend a ton of time and money out there targeting wolves specifically, trying to help keep elk on the ground. And a lot of times people, you know, it's ironic to me, I guess. I talk to people in my hometown who I've hunted with, who I grew up with, and they ask me what I'm doing. And I say, gosh, you know, F4WM has got me busy. I've been working 60 hours a week for months now. And they say, well, gosh, what is that? And it just blows my mind how poor of a job we've done getting the word out about our program. But, you know, just to share, trapping is not what the general public believes it to be. Trappers, you know, when you hear the term trapping, I think what goes into people's heads are these giant steel jaws that have teeth all over them that they used to try to use to catch grizzly bears. That you'd have to have a vise and a clamp to be able to even set them. People don't understand. You know, and I ask this question to them all the time, and typically I bring a wolf trap with me that I use to catch wolves, and I stick my hand in it, and I'll sit and have a conversation with them while that thing's on my hand so that they can see it doesn't hurt people. But I always ask him, how do you think the wolves we have here got here? And I get the blank stare. They shot some out of a chopper with darts. The rest of them they trapped with the very same trap I use today to catch and dispatch wolves. That's what a biologist uses to catch a wolf and put a collar on it so that they can study it for science and biology. Same thing with every other predator. All of the predators that are studied and collared are caught in the same traps that sportsmen use today as a means to, serve the conservation world. And it's a tool. It's not designed to harm. It's designed to hold. And that's the whole concept. And I wish that the general public could understand that. I should have brought a trap with me. I love doing that demonstration. Everybody jumps when I put my hand in it. But it's a lot of fun.
I kind of want to turn a little bit, Justin, and ask you, what's the best way for, obviously, you're in the Foundations of Wildlife Management are in Idaho and Montana. What are the best ways in those 2 states that the public can help you guys? And as well as maybe in the states like Colorado, Oregon, Washington.
Tell me this, like, just walk me through, sell it to me. Why should I be part of this? Why should I be part of Foundation for Wildlife Management?
Do you believe in keeping ungulates on the ground? Do you want to have elk to hunt? While you're sitting at home with your kids or at your kids' sporting events or hanging out on the couch watching football with your buddies, there are guys out there that are married to a trap line, having to run through blizzards and down trees nonstop all winter long, every 72 hours in Idaho and every 48 hours in Montana, killing themselves trying to keep elk on the ground so that you can go hear an elk bugle. And those guys need your help, and I'll tell you why. I've personally trapped almost 40 wolves, and for every single one I've caught, and I'm not bragging or saying I'm good at it, but for every single wolf I've caught, I've invested $1,500 in fuel alone and over 200 man-hours for every single one of those. And I'm not doing that because I have a passion for removing wolves. I'm not doing that because I enjoyed the experience. I'm doing all that work so that your kids and mine can get to hear elk bugle in the backcountry. And the expense alone, the guys that are getting this done, the very few people, those 42 men out of the 74,041 who tried, tell us every day, thank you so much for helping cover our fuel costs and our expenses because we could not afford to do this without your assistance.
You have these guys out there busting their can doing this. How are they getting paid through what you're doing? So what's that? Walk me through that. Like,
you bet.
I want to know where my dollars go and how much do I need to put in? How do I do it?
You bet. So if you go to F4WM.org, again, it's a mouthful, Foundation for Wildlife Management, F4WM.org, click the join button. It's $40. That $40, as a person who's not actively harvesting wolves, is a way for you to be able to help the very few that are getting it done. The 42 out of the 74,000 people who try to help those guys, keep them in the woods being productive. Your $40 membership goes in their pocket when they harvest a wolf. And this is how it takes place.
Okay.
They too sign up for $40 a year.
Yep.
When they harvest a wolf, they check it in with the Idaho Fish and Game Department or the Montana FWP department. In Idaho Fish and Game, you're going to get a big game mortality report. In Montana, you're going to get a wolf harvest registration form. You're going to send a copy of that form to us along with a copy of your out-of-pocket expense receipts, and we're going to mail you a check. You keep the wolf. The concept is really simple. We've done that over 1,700 times with $1.4 million generated from those memberships and fundraiser banquets that we have. So when we first put this together, the question was posed, what business model do we use? And so we started looking at, well, who are the conservation groups in the world that are successful?
Yeah, right.
Ducks Unlimited, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, the Wild Sheep Foundation. What is their business model? Well, they have banquets. Banquets give them a reason to advertise.
Yep.
That's where the majority of membership is accumulated.
Builds community.
That's where most people renew their membership.
Yeah.
And yes, being backwoodsy folks, we aren't real social, right? And that's one of the reasons it's hard to market, because our people, we have these established events. Like as an example, February 11th coming up, we've got a banquet in Sandpoint, Idaho that sells out at 650 people every single year. Those people come out of the woodwork once a year.
Yeah.
And they come for that banquet. And and they trade secrets and notes and concepts and ideas and thoughts and celebrate the good that we've done. When
It's like a trapper's rendezvous.
Yeah,
it kind of is in a way, but I'll tell you, less than 10% of the people there are actually hunters and trappers. The rest of that crowd is there cheering on the very few that can get it done, because the people that live where wolves are and have an impact understand the problem.
Yeah.
It's really easy for somebody who lives in the city and never leaves the blacktop, who will never hear a wolf howl, never see a wolf track, and never be impacted positively or negatively by wolf presence, to vote to have wolves, because it doesn't impact them. The people that live with wolves in their backyard understand the problem because they've seen it.
Yeah.
So those people come out of the woodwork and they have a big party to celebrate, and that's where the majority, 62% of our funding, comes from our fundraiser banquets.
Yeah.
Right? So
your trapper man said $500 per wolf was kind of a starting point for that.
Yep.
What's it today? How much does a guy get?
So it depends on where you harvest the wolf.
Yep.
And there's a couple of different concepts that come into play there. So we fund up to $500 per wolf statewide in both Idaho and Montana.
Yep.
We fund $750 per wolf in regions 1 and 2 of Montana. We fund $1,000 per wolf in Unit 1 of Idaho.
Yeah.
We fund $1,500 per wolf in all of those units that are no longer meeting elk management objectives, spanning the state of Idaho.
And that changes year by year.
It does.
Based on Fish and Game and Fish and Wildlife numbers.
Correct. And we fund $2,000 per wolf in the chronic livestock depredation units, which are defined by having confirmed kills, which are really difficult to confirm to start with, in 4 out of the previous 5 years.
Gotcha. Okay.
A lot of that portion, there's a good portion of that funding that's been brought on through the Idaho Wolf Control Board and the Idaho Fish and Game Commission through cost share agreement plans, where they have come to us and said, we would like to see sportsmen harvest more wolves in these specific regions because they're having a huge detrimental impact here. Can you help us? We implement the reimbursement program at those higher levels as a means to try to encourage our handful of guys that can really get it done to go where Idaho Fish and Game is calling for their help, right?
Yeah.
And so, and that's I
love it. It's all incentive based.
It is. It's all incentive based, and we are. People think that we're some bunch of bloodthirsty redneck hillbillies, and it's not that. We are a wildlife management mechanism that state agencies can implement as a means to assist them in managing wolf populations.
Justin, it's kind of frustrating to me, though, that the state didn't put something like this together. It took, I love it that you're doing it and that citizens have come forward and hunters and said, we see a problem, we're going to address it. But the state agencies, that's their job.
Agreed.
Why didn't they model it? Why didn't they create the solution? Why aren't they doing it at that kind of level as well?
Social and political ramifications. Right from day one, we got our wolf populations. The wolves were introduced in 95 and 96. They met their recovery goal of 300 total wolves in this system before the year 2000, right? 300 total wolves was what they claimed to be a fully recovered, healthy wolf population for the system that would not need augmentation any longer. at 300 wolves in 2000. That's when those numbers were met. And it wasn't until 2009 that they were able to get through the red tape and the politics and the lawsuits to obtain state management of those wolf populations. Had they had the ability to obtain that state management in 2000, when we met the objectives, we probably wouldn't have the issues that we're seeing today, because at that lower number, sportsmen could have had a larger impact on the wolf populations that we have. But because it took them all of that time, all those 9 years before they could even obtain authority, once we got authority, now they're so fearful of lawsuits and the threats that come over lawsuits. Montana just is in the middle of a lawsuit right now over their wolf management plan. They're at 3 times the management objective for their state. They've housed in half of their state the entire system's healthy wolf population based on the suitable habitat available for wolves, and they're being sued, saying that they're not properly managing wolves, or that this reduction of wolf population is unacceptable.
Yep.
My question for all of those people is, how many wolves do you intend to force to live in an area that only has suitable habitat for 1,100? And what does that look like? And why do you want wolves to become a hated animal? Because that's what takes place. They're forcing wolves to live where wolves have no business living and where they don't have suitable habitat. And for that reason, they're causing all of this conflict with sportsmen and ranchers. And we could have a healthy, happy wolf population if they would just allow the numbers to be managed to where they need to be.
Yeah.
So to answer your question,
Grizzlies.
yeah, same with grizzly bears, same concept. The reason the state isn't doing it is because of all of the constant lawsuits and political mess that comes with it.
So you guys can sidestep that?
Well, no, not necessarily. I can't tell you how many death threats I've had or how many people I've had, scream and yell and harass me about the concept. Yeah. But here's the deal. People ask me, why do you waste your time talking to those folks when somebody's threatening to, whatever? And I'd tell them this. I'd take them back to the very beginning. I was that guy. I watched National Geographic and had a huge passion and love for wolves. And I still do. But now that I have wolves in my backyard and have spent 10 years studying them, I've come to understand what a wolf really is. And it's not what's presented through the media. The whole video about how wolves saved Yellowstone and changed the rivers and all these things. I can go through that video and pick it apart from one aspect to the next as to how much false information is in there. And it there's so much drama and media presence that is geared towards generating funding and support for preservation extremist groups through this media push about wolves, that they've almost become untouchable. And here's the bottom line. I'm willing to take the heat. It doesn't matter to me. Sometimes there's a fine line between doing what's right and what the public is willing to accept. And again, just going back to my why, I want the next generation to get to have the experience and the abundance of wildlife and biodiversity that I've been blessed to have grown up with. And unless we take a stand and do something, they're not going to have that. And that's not fair to them. And it's, in our group believes the same way. And we attend all of our Fish and Game Commission meetings as a means of trying to make sure that we fully understand the ramifications of any proposal that we put forth. We try to make sure that we're having meetings and talking to our legislators about what needs done and what doesn't. And about the importance of state management and the concepts that are implemented there. It's just, it's such a dynamic, passion-filled topic. I get worked up over it. Sometimes I get sidetracked. Sorry, I get off on a rant.
It's perfect. That's what I wanted to know. So I'd love to do something where we do something like, a membership drive, like we do a giveaway or something for everyone who joins, over this period. We could do this giveaway deal. What sort of, are there restrictions around that being a nonprofit? Like what can be done there? Can we do things like that?
Yeah, you bet. So, as a nonprofit, the biggest restrictions that we have, honestly, are political. I mean, we can't go push for political candidates, as an example. There's certain restrictions in that regard. But as far as fundraising goes, I keep telling the guys, we work our tails off to try to keep the money coming in as fast as it goes out. Some nonprofits they generate funds through banquets and membership and things, and those funds go to a federal account or a national account or a state account or what have you. And then as an organization, each chapter can apply for use of those funds for a project, right? And so there's this stockpile of funding that builds. And F4WM, we're writing checks to the guys for their expenses for harvesting a wolf as fast as we can generate the money. And so being a 501c3, donations to F4WM are tax deductible. There's extreme interest and need for live auction and silent auction type items to be donated. Okay. We have, for each of our banquet, we have a live auction, a silent auction. We try to do about 10 or 12 games for each event. We've learned over the years that firearms are the greatest prize you can put on a game. You can trade that out for anything in the world, but you're going to sell more tickets for every game if there's a firearm as a prize. So for that reason, we, ahead of time, prior to our banquets, we buy up a gun prize for every game that we have available, and then we advertise that through a sponsor packet for different entities to be able to sponsor the expense, underwrite and cover the expense of that gun, so that way the profit that's generated from selling tickets or people playing that game at each banquet becomes actual profit that can be put forth to fund wolf harvests. So people can sponsor banquet events and the expenses that are linked to it. People can donate. People can join as a member. You can, there's lots of different things. People in new areas can start new chapters. People are always asking me, well, what does a chapter look like and what do they do? We don't have different projects. We've got one mission. We're trying to help the states control their wolf population. I tell everybody, put 30 to 50 people in a room and I'll come give a presentation and talk about what a chapter looks like, and we can get started. We've got a chapter in Sandpoint, Idaho, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, Lewiston, Idaho. It's called the Clearwater chapter. Salmon, Idaho, Treasure Valley, Boise, Caldwell area. We also have chapters in Montana. Kalispell is the Flathead Valley chapter. We've got Trout Creek, Montana, and then we just started a brand new chapter in the Bitterroot Valley there south of Missoula. And join your local chapter and help collect donated items, trips. Any connections to the outdoor industry, businesses and companies that support the concept of maintaining ungulate populations through predator management can support our program by donating items for our banquets. We've got 8 banquets this year. Honestly, the most work that's done for our program is our volunteer efforts to garner donations. And I've learned over the last 10 years, I suck at asking for things. Growing up off the grid and kind of being a small town kid, I like earning what I get. And so asking for handouts has been a real struggle for me. But I keep telling the guys at home, there's somebody out there that believes enough in what we're doing to fund this entire program as a tax write-off. We just haven't met him yet. So that's why I'm here at the show. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. I appreciate you coming on today, Justin. I really appreciate the fact that you're out there fighting this fight and making it be a thing, because our wildlife agencies can only do so much. And at the end of the day, it really does fall upon us as hunters to come together and do it. And every time I have someone on, like Robbie again with Blood Origins, I'm like, I am so glad that I have somebody on here that's fighting the fight, because I only have so much bandwidth, and it's nice. It's nice to have someone out there like you doing the job. So thank you. Well, I can't tell you how much I appreciate the opportunity just to come on the show. I appreciate your outreach and the things that you guys are doing too. Just the name Gritty, the first time I heard it, I just kind of chuckled to myself. And this is a statement that I make all the time. The men that removed wolves the first time were men. You know what I mean? Yeah. And in today's day and age, the guy that's willing to dig in and get gritty and do what it takes to get the job done are fewer and farther between. And the question that you asked about the states doing the job, we can ponder that all day long. We can ponder the ins and outs of who brought them and why, and how the Pittman Roberts money was abused, and all these different concepts that come down to it. but what are you doing? What are you doing right now today that's going to make a difference? That's my challenge to the world out there. We got to set our differences aside, work together as sportsmen. We are an army to be reckoned with if we just set our differences aside and join up. So thank you so much for the opportunity to come on and be a part of your podcast. And thank you for what you do.
All right. Thank you, Justin. Folks, thanks for tuning in. If you like this show, like and subscribe, comment on the channel. We appreciate you. Stay gritty.